Hello, it's Dr. Donna, and welcome to another episode of my podcast, Soul Talk and Psychic Advice. In the past, we have talked about the signs that your psychic ability may be opening and how to tell the difference between imagination and intuition. Well, today we are focusing on something equally important: how to strengthen your intuition without feeling overwhelmed. Because one of the biggest concerns people have when their sensitivity increases is, what if it begins to be too much? Which can happen. What if I feel everything too strongly? That can happen. And what if I cannot turn it off? And you could turn it down, but if you want your gift to be active, you don't want to fully turn it off. Because remember, it's a muscle, and so if you want it to grow and develop and evolve into it more, you need to leave it on somewhat. Always picture this dial, right? 1 through 10. And when I'm working, I need it at 10, right? But I could turn it down throughout the day. And when I want to rest or go out in public, I could turn it down to 1 or 2. I really don't want it all the way to 0. I want it alive all the time because sometimes it even helps you when you're out in the world dealing with people. And so I don't feel like we should ever turn it off. And these are valid concerns, right? About your gift being overwhelming or feeling everything too strongly or not being to turn it off. It's very valid. Many people assume intuitive ability means becoming emotionally flooded or energetically exhausted. It doesn't have to be that way. It only happens when you don't have tools. You need tools to help yourself to get through and how to function well as a psychic out in the world. So, healthy intuitive development should increase clarity, not create distress. Real intuitive development should make you feel more stable, more grounded, more confident, more clear, not more confused. So, in this episode, we will explore why intuition becomes, well, sometimes feels overwhelming at first, right? How the nervous system affects intuitive clarity, the difference between emotional overwhelm and intuitive information, how to build intuitive strength gradually, and how to feel safe while becoming more perceptive. And most importantly, how to grow your intuitive ability in a way that supports your well being, because that's what's important. And I think that's why a lot of psychics burn out and they get angry because they got to work. This is their work and this is what they know, but they're burned out and they can't manage their gift. And that's why you come across some psychics, when you get readings, they're kind of rude, kind of mean because they haven't found a way to deal with themselves and their own stuff and what it means to be a psychic and to do their own inner work. And it happens. And, I've seen it, I've experienced it, and it's a concern because, we're not going to be love and light all day, but we shouldn't be rude ever either. And clients should never feel like they can't call us if they need our help. And there's many times that when I'm working the line, people are like, sorry to bug you. And I said, are you kidding me? You're not bugging me. Thank you for calling me and trusting me. But sometimes I feel like they're bugging us, so we have to do better at being open and having an open heart and compassion and empathy for the client who is trusting us. They need someone to talk to, and it's not necessarily something for a therapist. And so they're calling us, and we should be grateful all the time. It is a blessing. And I remind my callers all the time, it is a blessing that you call me. You're not bugging me. And but a lot of psychics will get to that point because they just will burn out and they're just tired of the work. And once you regulate your nervous system, you're not tired of the work. You enjoy it. So let's talk about why intuition can feel overwhelming at first. When intuition begins to strengthen, awareness increases. And increased awareness means noticing more information, right? So this may include other people's emotions, tension in environments, subtle shifts in communication, unspoken dynamics, changes in your body sensations. If you have spent most of your life filtering out this information, suddenly noticing it can feel intense. It is similar to walking into a brightly lit room after being in the dark. Your system needs time to adjust. Many intuitive people did not grow up learning how to regulate sensitivity. Instead, they may have been told, "You're too sensitive. You overthink. Ignore that feeling. You're imagining things." I was definitely told that I was too sensitive. And sometimes I was. I would just cry at the drop of the hat. I didn't know what was going on, and there was no one there to tell me, what was happening. And, I believe my mom had the gift, but she ignored it. And so she wasn't going to help me. And then she died when I was 12. So I was just left to, shut it down to survive. So, as a result, when intuition begins to increase, the nervous system may interpret this new awareness as unsafe. Not because intuition is unsafe, but because unfamiliar experiences can feel destabilizing, and they do. They do for a lot of people. The goal is not to reduce intuition, no. The goal is to increase your capacity to feel safe while perceiving more information. The nervous system is the foundation of intuition. Let's talk about that. The nervous system is so important in so many ways. Your nervous system determines how safe or overwhelmed you feel while receiving intuitive impressions. When your nervous system is regulated, information feels manageable, perception feels clearer, insight feels neutral. When your nervous system is dysregulated, everything can feel urgent, sensations can feel intense, interpretations can feel fearful. Many people assume intuitive development is only spiritual, but it is also physiological. And boy, once I learned this, everything was great. It was. Your body constantly scans the environment for cues of safety or threat. This process is automatic. It happens below conscious awareness. When the nervous system feels safe, perception expands. When the nervous system feels unsafe, perception narrows. Both states influence intuitive clarity. That is why grounding practices are essential for intuitive development. It really is. It is so necessary to ground, and a lot of people don't do it. Psychics will just go on and work like it's another day, and they've done no centering work. None. So, not because intuition is fragile, but because perception is clearer when the body feels safe. Emotional overwhelm versus intuitive information. Let's discuss. Let's talk about it. Because one important skill is learning to distinguish between emotional overwhelm and intuitive insight. Overwhelm often feels urgent, fast, mentally loud, physically intense, looping or receptive. Intuitive information often feels simple, brief, neutral, clear, non-forcing. And this is probably why a lot of people don't know that they have a gift, because they're expecting something more dramatic to happen. And it doesn't with intuition, and you're left like, oh, that's all? I was expecting something more explosive, more exciting. And then you just get this very subtle feeling, but that's the one to trust. And that means that you're grounded enough to accept information. And so let's talk about it. For example, overwhelm may say, something is wrong, something is wrong, something is wrong, and it could trigger anxiety, panic, a trauma response, especially if you have survived trauma and you're used to things going wrong. You could definitely feel that way. But intuition may say, this situation may not be right for you. You see the difference? Overwhelm says something is wrong. Intuition says the situation may not be right for you. Overwhelm tends to escalate. It does. Intuition tends to state information once and allow you to choose how to respond. If you feel flooded with sensation, it usually means your nervous system needs support. And we live in this world where we wake up and the first thing we do is check our phone, you know, and that's a problem. If the first thing you do is check your phone, and it's like, where do you go from there, right? Because you started getting stimulated for the day. And are you looking at news? Are you looking at some discussion you had with somebody? Some people argue online. Are you looking at a debate? And it's easy to get roped into an argument online. Some people are on there just to bait people and argue. And so you're throwing off your nervous system. Now, I'm not saying don't let the first thing be to check your phone. Maybe there's some emergency. Maybe somebody's sick. Maybe there's a reason to check your phone, right? But what I'm saying is, if you do that, make sure you go somewhere for 5, 10, 15 minutes, whatever time you have, and ground yourself. Do some somatic exercises, do some journaling, do some meditation, do something for yourself to get yourself like in your body, back all the way in your body, feeling grounded, feeling supported, so that the day doesn't get away from you. Because once that happens, once we get set off by information, sometimes that determines the day, right? And you end up in this day that is kind of messy, and everything's a stressor, and sometimes you can't find your way back to center. So you want to always have ways to find your way back to center. That helps you in your everyday human life, and that helps you with developing your intuition and dealing with people and being more present and being able to hear what's being said. And even if you do it a few times throughout the day, sometimes I will just sit and do a somatic exercise or a lion's breath or something, or chant Om 3 times, just something to center your nervous system. Because we get away from it. There's too much information. And with technology, there's too much expectation. People want an immediate response because now we have cell phones and we have email. And, some people still feel obligated to answer every call and everything, even when it's not important. And so you gotta have a way to protect your mind, your body, and to keep your nervous system regulated. So that's important. And so, your intuition can feel inaccurate because of this, right? Because we're ungrounded. You can't trust it. And learning intuitive development involves learning nervous system regulation. And that will help you, you know? So stay with that. If you really want to develop your gift, it isn't just like, oh, one day to come to me, or I just do this exercise or that exercise. No, it's the nervous system regulation work. It makes a huge difference. Once I learned this, oh, this work became a joy. I didn't want to hide or run from it anymore. I think at times I was embarrassed or ashamed of this work because of what it did to my mind and body. But once I got regulated, I'm like, oh, you know, this is why I was meant to call to do this. This is wonderful. And now I feel very proud. I was leaving a science background and a chiropractic background to get fully into the woo. So a lot of you guys will be making changes like that, right? You'll be coming from a very traditional career and you will be going into this type of work. And so it's something to get ready for. And if you regulate your nervous system, it won't be overwhelming. So let's talk about safe ways to strengthen your intuition gradually. Intuition becomes stronger through consistent, gentle practice, not force, not pressure, not urgency. Here are supportive ways to build intuitive confidence. Number one, ask one small intuitive question each day. For example, what feels supportive today? And this is for you, right? What decision feels most aligned right now? What does my body need today? Start with low pressure questions. Avoid questions that feel emotionally charged at first. Don't start there with a big question. A lot of people are trying to answer a big question right away. Don't start there. Confidence builds through small, accurate experiences. Notice body signals. Your body often communicates intuitive information through sensation. You may notice expansion or tightness, warmth, heaviness, relief. And that feeling of relief is something else when you're reading psychically. It's like just knowing, right? These sensations can guide decision making and ask, does this feel contracting or opening? Over time, patterns become easier to recognize. Number three, limit overstimulation. Excess noise, media, or social input can make intuitive signals harder to recognize. Yes, that's why when, if I'm out in public and I talk to people and they go, oh, you're psychic, can you read for me? It's like, no, this environment's too noisy. I only do it in a professional setting. I just am not going to go do that in the noisy world because you could be getting other people's stuff. If somebody else is next to them, you might be getting their information instead of for the information that you're supposedly reading for. And so silence allows perception to organize. Even a few minutes of quiet can help. You don't have to sit in quiet for hours. Write down intuitive impressions. Recording impressions helps build trust in your perception. You may notice patterns over time. This strengthens confidence. Practice grounding. This is number 5. Grounding helps the nervous system feel safe. Simple grounding practices includes feeling your feet on the floor, right? Noticing your breathing, touching a stable object. I even do that when I'm doing grief coaching and I know the person could get triggered. I said, find something to anchor, a teddy bear, a blanket, something to anchor yourself. And that works also when you're opening up your gift. Spending time in nature and gentle movement, that all helps to ground. And sometimes just noticing your environment, look around the room so that you become aware of the room. And that will ground you also. And grounding does not reduce intuition. If anything, it supports it. So, let's talk about how intuition does not require urgency. But for some reason, people think it does. That it should be dramatic or urgent. But one common misunderstanding is believing intuitive information must be acted on immediately. No, but intuition rarely demands urgency. It provides perspective. And that's what it is about. You can receive intuitive information and take time to respond. Sometimes I take a lot of time. There's times I sit for weeks on something. You only act if you really feel like you need to in an urgent way, but really even take a few minutes to sit with it. And this is one thing I tell people. If you want to know how to make a decision, you look at it and you say, okay, what is the outcome if I do act? Write it down, and then write what is the outcome if I don't act? What are the what ifs can happen, right? And that's how you make a decision. You just don't feel this urgency like I have to do something, because that could be trauma in your nervous system that you're responding to, and that could set you up. That's how people make bad decisions. I don't want to say bad decisions, but decisions that they call bad, right? Is because they're reactive and they don't know where it's coming from because they're dysregulated. And so they make a decision and make matters worse. They're like, oh my God, now I'm spiraling. And so if we sit back, regulate, think things through, and then act, or not, or choose not to act, things come out better. Sometimes people laugh at me because they go, you must be worried, you must be scared, you must be. It's like, no, I'm just taking my time. This is my life. And it's kept me out of trouble, and it will keep you out of some problems. I've learned to stay away from certain people. I've learned to, think before moving. I've done an impulse move before, but like this move was a well thought out move to Sacramento. I've had a thought out move many times, but this was like the ultimate. This was life changing. And so if you just sit with things, instead of pressuring yourself to act, you'll come out so much better. Intuition doesn't mean act now or lose opportunity. And you can receive information and take time to respond to it. You can gather more information, right? You can wait. Trust develops gradually. There's no need to rush intuitive development. Clarity increases with patience. It does. Now, building confidence in your perception. Confidence develops through experience, not perfection. You may sometimes misinterpret signals. We do. Nobody's perfect. This is part of learning. Over time, you begin recognizing how intuition feels in your body, how clarity feels different from fear, how your perception communicates, and intuition often becomes more consistent when pressure is removed. You do not have to prove anything. No, you don't. You're learning to notice. Awareness grows gradually when given space. So think about it. Everything's subtle. Take time, study it. Don't try to make big life decisions with it. It takes time to get there. And sometimes there are signs, right, that tells you go in this direction. And so listen to it without reacting and feeling like I have to make this decision now and it has to be right. Don't do that to yourself, because then you dysregulate yourself even further. So let's close this out. If your sensitivity has been increasing, it does not mean you are becoming fragile. It means you are becoming more aware. Awareness becomes supportive when the nervous system feels safe. Intuition develops best in a regulated nervous system. So remember that. And in a future episode, we will talk about, well, I already talked about how trauma and life experiences can increase intuitive sensitivity. And, we're going to talk about other things about intuition, how to develop it, how to understand it, how to relate to other people. And if you would like to find out more about learning how to regulate your nervous system, you can go to my website and look up Embodied Psychic Portal. So my website is drdonnalee.com, drdonnalee.com, and go to the link that says Embodied Psychic Portal, and it talks more about the group that I started for being a regulated psychic who feels clear and honest and has done their own healing work, because we need to do our own healing work also. And it creates longevity. You don't burn out. You feel more connected. And so, definitely, if you want to find out more information, go to my website and like, follow, and share this episode. I want to thank you for listening. Have a great day, and I will see you in the next episode.